get going. There's breaking news coming out just minutes ago. The FBI has photos of the person they believe that they tracked up the stairwell onto the roof and then jumping off the roof after the shot. So, you know, this may only be for my Utah audience. I don't know if this is someone from Utah or from out of state or out of the country, but this is what the FBI has put out just minutes ago.
Well, I had done some interviews with Charlie up until about a year and a half ago, when he no longer spoke with me because of my position on the Israeli campaign of mass murder and expulsion from Gaza. And I simply disagreed with him. I also felt very strongly from the very beginning that 7 October was allowed to happen. It was a deliberate event. I think that he changed his mind later on, but I never really reconnected with him at that point. But I thought he was a very nice person. I mean, I didn't see anything that I thought was necessarily criminal or evil or anything else. I mean, I think he was just a normal, average, decent, honorable person. I also know that he had $40 million in his organization's bank accounts. And a lot of that appears to have come from Israel supporters. And I've seen all of the communications back and forth about his own statements to people like, I guess, Tucker Carlson and others, expressing concern about the possibility that his donors would be angry with him because he was changing his views on what the Israelis were up to. So I think it's tragic. It's awful. But here's something else that also occurs to me. I don't think we know a great deal about what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. I think that particular event was also another professional operation. Now, people said it was an assassination attempt. I don't think so, because the assassin would have put the second bullet through the president's temple. I think the person, whoever fired that round, fired it as a warning to the president. I don't think it was his intention to kill him. I mean, it's very quick. If you've ever had a good sniper rifle, probably the best in the world is still the M14. And I've shot that many times, and you squeeze off a round. If you miss by an inch, you squeeze off the next one immediately, and it's over. But we've never gotten the truth out of that. We had this poor kid on top of a roof who couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat. He's killed instantly, or at least after the president is shot at. Then all the material associated with him disappears. Within 24 hours, his body's cremated. We know nothing. So now we're seeing a lot of things show up on the internet. And the FBI has said something, as you pointed out. I don't believe anything the FBI says anymore. So I absolutely no confidence or faith in that institution that I once did. So I don't think we know. We have now a plane that belonged to someone named Derek Maxfield, who is a big contributor to Shabbat, a major Jewish movement to try and buy up and reclaim land in places like Ukraine. And he seems to have had his personal aircraft there that suddenly takes off after the event and then turns off its transponder, which is against the law, then turns around and lands again. So people are pointing fingers at him. Is that legitimate? I have no idea. I think we have people casting about for anything that they can find to explain the terrible tragedy and killing of Charlie Kirk. And I don't think we're going to find anything out. I think we're going to be very frustrated, ultimately. I'd be surprised if we ever find anything out. And anybody they point to, I'm suspicious of. You know, even Lee Harvey Oswald looks more and more today than ever as a patsy. And he had a rifle. It was Italian made. It was standard issue in the Italian army during World War II. And it was so grossly inaccurate and such a poor piece of equipment that the Italian soldiers readily threw it away in the desert in North Africa in 1940 and 41 and tried to pick up German or British rifles because their own rifle was so inaccurate. And that thing is supposed to be the one that Oswald used to kill the president. Doesn't look right. I don't think we know what happened then. I don't think we know what happened to RFK when he was shot. I don't think we know the whole story on what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. And I don't think we are going to know very soon what happened to Charlie. All we know is that it shouldn't have happened. And we do know that he had security. He had plenty of money to pay for security. But when you're dealing with someone who is an expert marksman, who is more than 200 yards away and is able to put a round into your throat, cutting your artery immediately and killing you, I don't think there was much anybody could do to protect him from that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let me show you a clip from CNN where they've got this Congressman, Seth Moulton, saying that most of America's problems and violence come from right-wing people. Let me play that for you, and then we'll react to it together.
Let's be serious about where this violence is coming from. Of extremist violent attacks in America, extremist violent murders, 76% are from right-wing extremists, 4% are from left-wing extremists. I condemn that 4%, but we also need to be honest about, as a nation, about where this violence is coming from. And oh, by the way, it's probably an appropriate time to talk about guns too. You hear a lot of conservatives saying, hey, the only thing we need to do here is get more guns on the street. That's not going to solve this problem. That's going to make it worse.
All right. I don't know where this congressman is getting his data. I don't, maybe I live in an echo chamber, but I don't, I do not believe that 76% of all violence and political problems are from the right and only 4% from the left. I don't see their political candidates being shot at, threatened. I don't know. And then he's, oh, well, I condemn the 4%. But we got to do something about these right wingers. What's your reaction to this guy?
Well, very recently we had this young Ukrainian girl on a train, light rail, in, I guess it's Charlotte. Is that where it was? Charlotte, North Carolina, who was attacked from behind and knifed to death, has her throat cut. Then within a day or two, we have another girl, blue-eyed, blonde, white girl, who is a veterinarian, very lovely woman, walking her dog, who was attacked by another black man and chopped into pieces with a machete. Now, I don't think either of those black men were necessarily left-wing extremists. Now, were these hate crimes because these were white women they wanted to murder? I don't know. But I do know that they were, in both cases, they were using knives. One was a machete and the other one was a knife of some kind, smaller than a machete. So I don't think we are going to ban all forms of knives and machetes, are we? So the notion that banning guns is going to eliminate the problem is a bit silly. Anybody, this is something else we need to keep in mind. If someone wants to kill you, if you're a public figure, and I've had lots of threats against me, so I'm well aware of this. If someone wants to kill you and they are professionals and they have a good weapon, a good rifle, top of the line, like an M14, and they have a scope on it and they've trained and they've zeroed the thing, they're going to get you. You're not going to escape. That's the lesson of history. If somebody really wants to get to you, they're going to get to you. They can use explosives. They can use knives. They can use poison, guns. I mean, we have, I think, a total of 7 politicians in Germany who have now died suspiciously under circumstances we can't even begin to imagine. Germany is a place where nobody has a weapon. Everything's tightly controlled. But it didn't save the lives of those 7 politicians, assuming that they were actually murdered. And we're going to have trouble finding out because the Secret Service in Germany, along with the police, are instruments of the government. The government is in the hands of the left. And the left doesn't want the truth. So the notion that removing guns is going to solve anything is silly nonsense. But the other point on I don't know where he gets his figures. I have no idea. So I can't even address that. But we know that crime statistics, particularly as they regard race, have been suppressed, mismanaged, and deliberately falsified for a very long time. Because, all you have to do is look at the statistics about who's killing who, and 13% of the population is responsible for over 50% of the violent crime and rape and assault and so forth. Now, within that 13%, it's usually young men. It's not everybody, man, woman, and child in the 13%. So I don't find his contribution to the discussion of any great help at all. He's simply trying to exaggerate, and frankly, he's anxious to divide the country. And that's a great way to do it. He's done a beautiful job. He's now lied and alienated everybody in sight, as far as I can tell, who might otherwise have listened to him. But of course, he has a constituency. I don't know who they are. You have to look at it, see what the composition is demographically, and then that may explain why he's elected. And may have nothing to do with any of the things we're discussing.
Okay. I've noticed the mainstream media, they like to put a lot of attention on conservative podcasters. Many believe that conservative podcasters played a major role in Donald Trump being elected for his second term. But I go on, I look at CNN.
I don't agree with that, for whatever it's worth.
You don't
I think that was true during the first time he ran for office. And if you go back to when he ran in 2016, after that election occurred, it was a tremendous event to crush alternative media and get it off platforms and eliminate it, so that you were stuck with the mainstream, which was firmly in the hands of the people that opposed Trump. And I still think that's the case today. So I don't agree with that. I think you have to look at the people that are responsible for the donations, the big money that went into his campaign, and their ability to persuade others like them not to support the Democrats. So I think there was a decision that Donald Trump was going to be president. And the Uniparty largely agreed with it. And that's what you got. So I don't agree with that argument.
Okay. I guess I disagree respectfully with your disagreement. Because I mean, at the end of the day, doesn't it come down to votes, though?
No. Democracy in this country is a fraud. Electoral integrity is a joke. So that's not true. Somebody like Zuckerberg, who poured a quarter of millions of dollars into various cities in order to essentially support the election of Donald Trump's opponent, that was Biden, providing automobiles to get people out to vote, providing lots of ballots, paper ballots that could be rapidly filled out, signed off on, and then stuffed in the ballot boxes. Zuckerberg did not do that in the last election. He was called off.
Okay.
So I don't believe in electoral integrity in this country at all. You got to understand, I also grew up in North Philadelphia, where they haven't had a clean election since the 50s, if then. And remember that in all the top cities, the top 10 cities in the United States today, they are all majority non-white. And there's only one party there. That's the Democrat Party. If you want to give it that title, I mean, I don't know what else you would call it. They all seem to support that. But you got to take that into consideration. If you think you've got a snowball's chance in hell in any of those cities in making a dent, you're delusional. So democracy is, as people frame it, no, we don't have it. And our electoral integrity is terrible.
What do you make of this story of the elections being rigged and controlled out of Serbia? Do you think, have you heard any of that?
Forget it. No, I don't buy that.
So you think it just came down to the billionaires turn on the money. It went into all this ballot harvesting, and because I mean, there's a huge discrepancy between the number of votes Obama got, Biden got, and Kamala Harris got. And you're saying that injection of money led to all of those additional paper ballots?
Well, it's not just a question of money. The money is critical because the money pays people. If you look at most Republican workers, they're not paid a dime. Most of them are volunteers. They give their own time. They go out and do what they have to do. The vast majority of the people that call themselves Democratic workers are paid, whether that money comes from Zuckerberg or Singer or Soros or any number of other people. They're actively paid, and that organization works. In other words, if you're willing to invest in buses or, let's say, SUVs or something else to go pick people up and take them to the voting booth, if you're willing to get a team together to fill out absentee ballots. I mean, this is something Trump has talked about, and he's absolutely right. And we've got them on camera, in elections, just filling out ballots and then looking at ballots that came in that were not what they wanted and throwing them out. I mean, we saw that down in Georgia. We've seen it in many, many states. My point is, the whole idea of free and fair elections is a joke. It's not real. That's over. Now, some people say, well, Doug, they've always had corruption. Of course, you always have corruption. The question is, what's the level? How much can you tolerate before the process is completely devalued and discredited? My point is that I think the whole process is discredited. Just as people now look at the FBI and they question, the truth that they're told by the FBI. I mean, anybody who speaks to the FBI for any length of time today without an attorney present is crazy. Forget it. If any policeman comes to your door and demands entry, he has to have a warrant. If he wants to interview you, you tell him, here's the number of my attorney, or I'll get you a number and my attorney and I will visit you. You do not trust anyone anymore. Those days are over. And I grew up in a world in the 50s and the 60s where those things were sacrosanct. Nobody questioned the FBI. Nobody questioned any of the great institutions. Today, we have to question all of them. They've all been corrupted. That's the problem.
Okay. Let me get your thoughts on this, and then I want to ask you some National Guard questions. Maybe this one hits closer to home for me, but there's now people on the internet. They're compiling kill lists of conservative podcasters, and they're voting and putting out information about who should be next: J.K. Rowling, Matt Walsh, Trump, Ben Shapiro, Libs of TikTok, Elon Musk. And they're going in and they're voting and they're putting out all of this information. I mean, I don't want to turn into the Minority Report where you go after somebody, for a thought or a comment before they've actually pulled the trigger or done something horrific. But this is where I say, where is the moral compass anymore? People are literally just right out in the open compiling lists of who should be assassinated next.
Well, the moral compass is gone. It's been gone for a long time. And the question we have to ask is, what's the foundation for the moral compass? Historically, it was Christianity. Now, we as Americans did not always perfectly align ourselves with the teachings of Christ, but there is no country in the world that is more completely a product of the Protestant Reformation than the United States. That was our culture. Well, I think that's gone. All you have to do is go back and read inaugural addresses by several presidents. Go read Coolidge. Go read Harding. Even FDR. Even Truman. Eisenhower. And you don't get very far in these inaugural addresses without invoking religion. Not as a state entity, but as the foundation for this thing you call the moral compass. I mean, why would we have a group of people in the United States that think it's a great idea to kill tens of thousands, perhaps millions of Arabs, Muslims and Christians, by the way, in Gaza and the West Bank? Who in the hell thinks that's a good idea? And I'm not a churchgoer by any stretch of the imagination, but I ask frequently to audiences, I said, I don't recall in the teachings of Christ that I can find the advocacy for such a position. It's outrageous. I don't think this is something we ought to be doing. My point is that seems to be absent now. So there is no moral compass. So the real question is, what are you going to do? If you can't trust anybody in the government anymore to tell you the truth, you try to dig it out yourself. And that brings you back to the alternative media, because that's turned out to be the only place that you have any chance whatsoever of finding the truth. Now, when it comes to compiling lists of people who should be killed, that's not entirely new. I mean, I've been on a kill list for a long time for this Ukrainian secret police organization that operates right out of Langley in the CIA. And I'm not the only one. Lots of us have been on there. Tulsi Gabbard was on there. Tucker Carlson's on there. Anybody who opposed the insanity in Ukraine has ended up on that list. I think there's a good chance that anybody who opposes our positions that we're taking in the Middle East is probably also vulnerable to this sort of thing. I don't have an easy answer to your question. How do you fix it? You're not going to fix it by going to the ballot box where you are presented with people who are already vetted to ensure when they show up, they're not going to change anything.
Yeah, I'm also on that kill list for telling the truth that Russia was winning the war. Okay, here on the home front, what are your thoughts on President Trump using the National Guard to go into some of these cities? A thought that I've been having is he's getting a lot of resistance from blue cities inside of blue states. I just wonder if maybe the first move should actually be into a red state with a blue city that has high crime, set an example, let the nation see what could be done. I don't know. What do you make of all that?
Well, you're getting to something that I've talked about from almost the beginning of the Trump administration. There is no strategy. There's no strategy for the Middle East. There's no strategy in Eastern Europe. There's no strategy, period, for anything that I can identify. There's no strategy really to deal with the sovereign national debt. If you look at Besant and the kinds of things he's trying to do, most of this strikes me as being impulse driven. You know, these are emergency actions to deal with something. They're not part of a larger strategic framework. So when you talk about, well, what do you think about using the National Guard? I think that's the wrong question. First of all, I have no objections to federalizing the National Guard for use in the nation's capital. Remember, I've lived in Washington, D.C. off and on for a long time. I've got a lot of experience there. I went there as a child when I lived in Philadelphia because my mother was involved in Republican politics. She was the president of the Republican Women of Pennsylvania. So I got dragged down there. It's one of the reasons I'm not in politics, by the way. I didn't like it. So Washington has been a disgrace to the nation for a long time. You know, it's a place that should be a gleaming example of everything that is good about America, not an example of everything that's wrong with us. And I think that was President Trump's view, and I agree with him. And I think the use of the Guard there has had positive impact. And if you talk to people that are down there, that live there, they'll tell you that. And many of those people happen to be black. You know, I pointed out to people when I was on active duty and I'd been asked to help formulate the opening phase of how to get to Baghdad quickly in 2003. And at the time, I was talking to people like Newt Gingrich and others about how you do this and so forth. Jamie McTiernan or McInerney or something, several people. And the point is that at the time, there was this woman interviewed in the Washington Post, and they had her picture there, and she was an elderly black woman. And as the troops were deploying to the Middle East, she was interviewed, and she said, well, I wish they'd come to my neighborhood and round up and get rid of all the drug pushers, the pimps, the prostitutes, and other criminals. Well, that's what's happening. Now, it doesn't make any difference how good the National Guard is at doing its job and helping ICE and others clean out illegals and criminal networks. Because it's Trump and it's coming from the right, they're going to be attacked by the opponents, the opposition. There's no question about that. And so I don't think there's an easy way to do it. But what I would say is that Franklin Roosevelt had something he called fireside chats. I think there were only 6 or 7 of them. There weren't very many. But he came on the radio and he would speak very matter-of-factly the way we are. And he would explain, this is why I'm an advocate for this policy. This is why I've asked Congress to do this. And remember, they talked about Lend-Lease. And he said, if your neighbor's house is on fire, you lend him a hose so that he can put the fire out. That's what I'm trying to do with Lend-Lease to help the British and so forth. That was a good way to do it. We haven't had anything like that from this president. What we need is someone to stand up there and give a presentation and say, these are the statistics. This is what's going on. This has been happening for this many years. It has to stop. This is our capital. And by the way, this is a test case for what we are planning to do on a national basis. But this is the first. We're going to do this. We're going to learn from it. We're going to see what works, what doesn't, before we go any further. And then once we've completed this task, we'll come back to you with a strategy for how we plan to go to other cities and help law enforcement enforce the law and clean up those cities. That doesn't mean that the people that hate Donald Trump and hate you and me and people like us are going to feel any differently. But it's the way you do business. You know, Abraham Lincoln said, without public sentiment, nothing is possible. With public sentiment, everything is possible. And he was not elected in landslides.
Okay. I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Like, let me show you the data, the reasoning, the justification for why we want this approach so that people can get behind it, so that you have that public sentiment. That's, I guess, why I've been thinking, like, I know Trump likes to go where he's not wanted. It gets, political energy. It keeps him in the news cycle. But I do look at places like Tennessee, very red. Then you have Memphis that has horrible crime. They've been led by Democrats for 5 decades, right? That might be a good test run of actually cleaning up a city where the governor is going to support you, and then let people see. And if Illinois isn't going to get behind that and they're going to continue to vote, like, I don't know, you can't talk people out of a bad idea sometimes. I'm just wondering if that is a better strategy.
Well, I think it's something that has to be part of the larger strategy. And that's what I was talking about. I think he wanted to take on Washington immediately because it's a national showcase. I mean, I used to fly in from Europe all the time when I was on active duty with large numbers of Germans and French and other people, and they were frankly appalled at what they found. They couldn't believe it. Now today their cities are as bad, if not worse, than any of ours. But this is 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and things were quite different in Europe at that point. So they were disgusted. They wouldn't say anything publicly, but privately they would confide that in me. How does this happen? This is your capital. Now, I also think he wanted to demonstrate something else. The Democrats used the National Guard to barricade the Capitol and then guard it against ostensible, dangerous right-wing fanatics, which don't exist anyway, although they may increasingly, given what's going on, but they really are irrelevant. I mean, I always say, get all those white supremacists into a stadium and see how many you've got. You're not going to find very many. You're going to fill a stadium. You're lucky to fill an auditorium. That may change. I mean, we're on that path right now of radicalization. There's no doubt about it. But the left has always had this boogeyman because they're paranoid, and they should be paranoid. You don't open borders in a country like the United States and let in millions of people about whom you know nothing, and then tell everybody everything's fine when you know that the people that you're admitting in many cases are overtly hostile to the United States at the most. And secondly, they're not coming to be Americans. They're coming to get free health care and free education or free anything else they can. My point is the people that have done that have betrayed the trust and interests of the American people. That's a form of treason. When you have someone like Mayorkas, who's running Homeland Security, who is simultaneously funneling money through various agencies down to Panama to set up, organize, and launch, invasions of our country, of illegals, that's effectively treason. So, I guess what I'm saying is it's not enough just to give the fireside chat strategy. We have to call it out for what it is. I haven't seen much evidence for people willing to stand up and do that. There aren't very many courageous people on the Hill these days. I mean, you could point to Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene, God bless them, but that's out of what, 550? That's not good.